Have you ever wondered why the very thing you want most, a man's love, his devotion, his unshakable presence, slips further away the more tightly you cling to it? The paradox has burned through centuries of myth and poetry. The more a woman grasps for affection, the more the object of her longing recoils into the shadows. It is not cruelty nor fate, but psychology, woven deep into the architecture of the human unconscious. Carl Jung revealed that love is rarely about the beloved. It is the reflection of what each carries inside. And until a woman learns the art of detachment, a man cannot meet her with the purity of love, only with the fog of his projections. Detachment is not coldness. It is not apathy, nor indifference. It is the luminous strength of a woman who does not bind her worth to another's recognition. In her there is no frantic hunger, no desperate plea for validation. She stands as a mirror that does not distort, and in that clarity a man confronts himself. He may tremble, for detachment unveils his shadow. His desire to control, his fear of abandonment, his fragile ego, all rise to the surface when he cannot shake her composure. The woman who has mastered detachment does not beg to be chosen. She becomes the choice itself, and that shifts the entire dynamic of attraction. Imagine this. You are with a man who thrives on your need for him, who feels powerful because your emotions rise and fall with his attention. Now picture yourself withdrawing, not in anger, not in manipulation, but in serene self-possession. You become like the Stoics described, a fortress whose walls are not built of stone, but of inner discipline. Marcus Aurelius spoke of the soul being unconquered when it is detached from external circumstance. In that same way, a woman detached from a man's approval becomes untouchable. Her light grows brighter, not dimmer. He feels it, the shift in gravity, the unsettling reality that she is no longer orbiting his moods. Suddenly, his projections collapse. For the first time, he must see her as she is, not as a reflection of his insecurities. Jung believed that relationship is a crucible for individuation, the process by which the self becomes whole. But most couples do not reach this alchemy because they remain ensnared in egoic games. The man loves not the woman, but the echo of his anima, his inner feminine projected onto her. The woman loves not the man, but the fantasy of being completed, rescued, affirmed. This is why passion burns out into resentment, why love stories collapse under their own illusions. Detachment breaks the spell. It forces both to see beyond projection, to witness the soul of the other without chains of need. Only then does love transform into something eternal. You may resist this truth. Perhaps you think, if I detach, won't he leave? Won't he feel unloved? But here's the paradox. When you cling, he suffocates. When you release, he breathes. Detachment does not push him away. It creates space for him to step toward you freely. Like water slipping through fingers, love cannot be gripped. It must be allowed to flow. The more you demand certainty, the more you poison intimacy with control. The more you lean into your own completeness, the more magnetic you become. Men feel it instinctively. A woman who does not need to be pursued is the one who compels pursuit. Her absence of desperation awakens in him a hunger to prove himself, to rise to meet her strength. And yet, detachment is not an act you perform. It is an inner state you embody. To play at detachment, while secretly seething with fear, is still attachment in disguise. True detachment emerges from shadow work, from confronting the fear of abandonment that drives your longing, from peeling back the layers of childhood wounds that taught you to equate love with survival. Jung would call this integrating the shadow, illuminating the hidden patterns that keep you trapped. Until you face that darkness, detachment will remain a mask, fragile and brittle. But when you burn through it, you rise like a phoenix free of chains. Then, and only then, does love meet you as an equal, not as a prison. Detachment is a radical act of faith. Faith not in the man, not in the relationship, but in yourself. Faith that even if he leaves, you remain whole. Faith that love is not something to chase, but something that flows naturally to those who are unafraid to lose it. This is the courage Seneca spoke of. The courage to desire. Nothing so desperately that its absence destroys you. And, paradoxically, it is precisely this strength that draws others closer. The man who once tested your boundaries now respects them. The man who once fed on your insecurity now stands in awe of your serenity. Love, finally, has the soil to grow. Detachment does not arrive overnight. It is not a switch you flip, but a slow shedding of illusions that once felt like oxygen. Most women are taught to confuse attachment with love, to equate longing with devotion, need with intimacy, sacrifice with proof of affection. Yet beneath this conditioning lies a deeper psychological truth. What often passes as love is simply trauma reenacted, unhealed wounds disguised as passion. Jung called it the compulsion of the unconscious. What you refuse to face inwardly returns outwardly as fate. The man you cannot let go of is often the mirror of the father you never felt secure with, the echo of a love you once had to fight to earn. You call it chemistry, destiny, soul connection, but it is the psyche replaying its oldest script. This is why detachment is so threatening. It is not just a choice about a man. It is a confrontation with the ghost of your past. To detach means to stop reenacting. It means refusing to keep auditioning for a role in a story that only ends in loss. It means standing in the empty space of your own solitude and allowing the discomfort to burn through you until it transforms. Most will avoid this pain. They will cling, beg, manipulate, or self-destruct just to delay the silence of detachment. But those who endure it emerge changed. They rise as women whose worth is no longer tied to whether a man stays or leaves. And in that rebirth, attraction itself bends in their favor. From the man's perspective, detachment destabilizes the game. If he has built his identity on being needed, your freedom will expose his weakness. He will test you. He will push buttons, withdraw affection, create chaos. Anything to reassert the old pattern where you orbit around his moods. But when you remain calm, when you do not break, he confronts an abyss inside himself, the realization that his power cannot bend you. In that moment, something strange happens. His respect grows. The very thing he thought he wanted, your need, is replaced by something deeper, his desire to be worthy of your independence. This is the hidden alchemy of detachment. It awakens in men not pity, but reverence. The Stoics knew this principle well. Epictetus taught that freedom begins when you stop placing your happiness in what lies outside your control. A man's behavior, his attention, his commitment, these are outside of you. When you hinge your value on them, you suffer. But when you reclaim your axis, you become untouchable. Your emotions no longer rise and fall with his storms. You are the mountain, not the weather. And every man feels the difference between a woman who clings to his shadow and a woman who shines from her own fire. Perhaps you fear that detachment will make you unfeeling. But consider this. The most radiant love does not come from need, but from overflow. When you detach, you are not closing your heart. You are cleansing it of desperation. You are making space for love to be chosen, not coerced. And this is what makes you unforgettable. A woman who does not beg for affection leaves an imprint no man can erase. He knows that if she allows him into her world, it is not because she cannot live without him, but because she chooses to share her fullness. That choice carries a power far greater than dependency ever could. Still, detachment demands sacrifice. You must release the fantasy that someone else will save you. You must let go of the belief that your value is proven only when a man declares you his. You must surrender the illusion that clinging keeps love alive, when in truth it strangles it. This surrender feels like death because in a way it is. The death of the old self that survived on scraps of validation. But what follows is rebirth. A quieter, steadier self emerges. One who is not afraid of solitude. One who knows that silence is not emptiness but wholeness. And here lies the paradox. Only when you no longer need his love can he give it freely. Only when you detach from the outcome can intimacy breathe without suffocation. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming whole unto yourself, so that relationship is not a bargain for survival, but a meeting of equals. Two individuals, each sovereign, choosing to intertwine not out of lack, but out of abundance. This is the love that endures. Not the frantic chase, not the obsession, not the projection, but the union that rises from freedom. And you, listening now, must ask, are you willing to step into that freedom? Are you willing to let go of the illusion of control, to endure the void of detachment, so that something greater can be born? For if you are, you will discover the truth that has always been waiting. The power to be loved begins with the courage to let go. There comes a moment in every woman's journey when she realizes that clinging to love is not love at all, but fear disguised in tenderness. Fear of abandonment, fear of invisibility, fear that without his presence she will dissolve into nothing. Jung would say this is the voice of the wounded child within, the part of the psyche that never received secure love, and so it begs, pleads, and bargains in adulthood to avoid feeling that primal ache again. Yet the paradox remains. The very act of grasping keeps the wound unhealed because it chains the woman's power to the unpredictable tides of a man's behavior. Detachment is the scalpel that severs this chain. But make no mistake, it cuts deep. It is not passive. It is not simply ignoring him or feigning indifference while secretly drowning in longing. It is the conscious, disciplined practice of turning inward, of rooting your value in something unshakable. Seneca wrote that no man is free who is a slave to desire. A woman who needs a man's constant reassurance is shackled by that very desire. But when she loosens her grip, when she withdraws her sense of worth from his attention, she awakens to an extraordinary truth. She was whole long before he ever entered her life. And in that realization, a new kind of love becomes possible. For the man, this shift is seismic. A woman detached forces him into confrontation with his own unconscious. His projections no longer land. His ego games no longer dominate. He can no longer measure his worth by her desperation, for there is none left to feed him. Many men will flee from this mirror because it reveals too much. It strips them of the illusion of control. Yet those who are capable of growth, those with the courage to face their own shadows, will rise to meet her strength. They will not love her as a possession, but as a sovereign equal. And this is precisely why detachment is not only for the woman's liberation, but for the purification of love itself. But how does one practice such detachment when every fiber of the nervous system screams to hold on? Here, modern psychology intersects with ancient wisdom. Trauma teaches the body to seek familiarity, even if that familiarity is pain. You are drawn to men who replicate old wounds because your nervous system confuses them with safety. To detach, you must first teach the body a new rhythm. Breathe through the panic of silence. Sit with the ache of solitude. Allow the wave of anxiety to crest and fall without rushing to soothe it through his presence. This is not cruelty to yourself. It is reconditioning. It is the sacred rewiring of your attachment patterns, the integration of your shadow. And once the body learns it will not die without him, your spirit begins to taste freedom. That freedom carries a beauty that men cannot ignore. A woman who no longer trembles at the thought of loss radiates a presence that is both mysterious, and magnetic. She is not playing games. She is not withholding affection to manipulate. Her calm arises from true inner security, and in her gaze, a man feels both unsettled and inspired. Unsettled because he can no longer define her. Inspired because he senses she will not lower her worth to match his fear. She calls him upward without a word. And though some men will falter, the one prepared for her will rise. You may wonder, is this not loneliness, to stand so alone in your strength? But consider this. Loneliness comes from abandoning yourself in the pursuit of another. When you detach, you return to yourself. You rediscover the richness of your own inner world, the passions, the creativity, the sacred silence that was drowned out by your need for validation. And in that rediscovery, you become luminous. Love may still come, but it will come differently. No longer as a drug to numb your emptiness, but as a dance between two souls already full. This is the only kind of love that does not corrode with time. Jung would insist that individuation is the ultimate goal. Not romance, not security, but wholeness. And love, in its truest form, can only exist between two individuated beings. Detachment is the doorway into that state. It is the crucible where you stop chasing reflections and begin embodying your own essence. And once you embody it, men sense it like fire in the dark. They may fear it, but they cannot forget it. For the woman who is whole within herself is the rarest vision of all, the vision of what love could be if it were stripped of fear. Detachment is not the end of love. It is the beginning of a love that is real. Most entanglements we call relationships are chains of projection, ego, and survival instinct. The man projects his anima, the unconscious feminine, onto the woman and mistakes her for the missing piece of his soul. The woman projects her longing for safety, her hunger to be chosen onto the man, and mistakes his presence for the balm of her childhood wounds. Both are blind. Both are acting from shadows. Jung wrote that until the unconscious is made conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Detachment tears the veil from fate. It forces you to see not only him as he is, but yourself as you are. And it is only then that you can decide, truly decide, whether this love is worthy of you. The woman who clings is at the mercy of illusion. She believes his affection will complete her, yet every kiss tastes of desperation, every silence becomes torture. The woman who detaches, however, does not reject intimacy. She redefines it. She does not ask, will he stay? But rather, am I staying true to myself while he is here? This subtle shift changes everything. The relationship is no longer a battlefield for control, but a mirror for growth. He cannot love her through manipulation or pity. He must meet her with his own clarity, or fall away. In this sense, detachment is merciful. It filters out the half-hearted, the insecure, the manipulative. Men who sought to dominate will drift away, unable to thrive in the atmosphere of her sovereignty. Men who feared commitment will falter, unable to anchor themselves in her calm. Yet the one who remains will not be the one dazzled by her dependence, but the one awakened by her independence. He will not feel needed, but chosen. And to be chosen by a woman who does not need you, that is a force few men can resist. Still, the journey to this strength is brutal. It asks you to face the loneliness you have avoided for years. It demands that you sit in silence without reaching for the false comfort of his attention. It challenges you to let him walk away without crumbling into dust. This is shadow work in its rawest form. The confrontation with your deepest fears of abandonment, rejection, and insignificance. Jung saw individuation as a descent into the underworld of the psyche, a death before rebirth. Detachment carries that same descent. You must allow old parts of you to die. The part that begged, the part that bargained, the part that believed she was nothing without him, and in their ashes a truer self emerges. One who does not chase, one who does not plead, one who waits, not for rescue, but for resonance. The Stoics, too, would recognize this transformation. Marcus Aurelius spoke of holding yourself like a sphere, complete and round, no matter what strikes against you. A detached woman embodies this. She may love deeply, passionately, fiercely, but she does not collapse when love is withheld. Her center remains. Her emotions move like waves upon the surface, but beneath there is stillness. That stillness is what makes her unshakable, and when a man encounters that, it forces him to confront his own instability. He realizes that to hold her, he must first hold himself. This is why men respect detachment, even when they do not understand it. A woman, unafraid to lose them, disarms their ego. It denies them the familiar comfort of control. Some will call her cold. Others will accuse her of playing games. But those words reveal only their fear. For deep down, they know. Her strength exposes their weakness. And in that exposure they are given a choice, to rise or to retreat. Either way, she does not lose. Detachment ensures she always remains sovereign. And here lies the paradox once more. By no longer making his love the center of her existence, she becomes irresistible. Not because she tricks him, not because she withholds affection, but because she embodies the very thing men unconsciously crave: the presence of the great mother archetype, the self-contained feminine who is both nurturing and free, receptive yet unbound. To stand in her orbit is to feel both awe and humility. To be loved by her is to feel not consumed, but expanded. And to lose her is to know the cost of taking sovereignty for granted. You must understand this. He cannot love you truly until you master detachment. For only then do you cease to be his mirror, his projection, his lifeline. Only then do you become yourself, whole, radiant, undeniable. And when you stand as yourself, love transforms. It ceases to be a battle and becomes a choice. His choice, your choice. A dance between two who are already complete. There is a silence that follows true detachment, and it is not the silence of emptiness. It is the silence of power. The woman who no longer trembles at the thought of loss, who no longer confuses survival, with love steps into a radiance that cannot be diminished. Jung called it individuation. The Stoics called it freedom. Modern psychology calls it self-worth. Whatever the name, the experience is the same. A woman no longer ruled by fear, no longer bound by the fragile approval of another. She becomes untouchable, not because she has closed her heart, but because she has opened it without conditions. Men sense this shift like a change in air pressure. The games that once worked, silence, withdrawal, manipulation, fall flat. The power struggles that once kept her orbiting his ego now dissolve into irrelevance. He can no longer define her value by his presence, because she has already defined it by her essence. For the first time, he must love her without power, without control, without the safety net of her dependence. He must love her freely, or not at all. And in that moment, his own soul is tested. For a man who cannot rise into that freedom will flee, but a man who can will finally meet her as an equal. This is the rebirth detachment offers. The pain of letting go, of enduring the silence, of walking through the fire of abandonment, transforms into serenity. The woman discovers she was never asking for too much. She was simply asking the wrong person. She realizes that the love she sought outside was always the echo of the love she had not yet given herself. And once she gives it, fully, fiercely, without apology, every relationship she touches changes form. No longer a bargain for safety, but an exchange of abundance. No longer a desperate plea to be seen, but a conscious decision to be mirrored in her wholeness. There is poetry in this kind of detachment. It does not harden a woman. It softens her into truth. She can love with tenderness because she is not afraid of loss. She can give with generosity because she is not measuring return. She can welcome a man into her life without needing him to fill a void. And ironically, this is the moment when love becomes most intoxicating for him, when he realizes he is with a woman who chooses him not out of fear, not out of survival, but out of desire. She does not cling because she must. She stays because she wants. That difference shakes him to his core. And so the art of detachment is not about withholding love, it is about elevating it. It transforms relationships from chains into wings, from prisons into paths of growth. Jung understood that true union is possible only when both souls stand whole. Detachment is the doorway into that union, the crucible where old illusions die so that something eternal can be born. And once you have crossed it, you can never return to the old patterns. You will never again beg to be chosen, because you know you already are. You will never again fear his absence, because you carry your own presence like a crown. Remember this as the final truth. He cannot love you until you master detachment, because until then, neither of you is free. But once you do, love ceases to be a battlefield. It becomes a choice made in clarity, a bond without chains, a fire that does not consume but illuminates. And in that light, you finally see what was waiting all along, the power of a woman who loves without fear. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase, she chooses.